Life had always been cruel to Jenny. From a young age, she had known nothing but hardship and sorrow. Orphaned at a young age, Jenny's childhood was a series of lonely days and sleepless nights. She was left with the sole responsibility of her little sister, Mary, who was just a toddler at the time. Their parents, hardworking but poor farmers, died in a fire that ravaged their small farm, leaving behind nothing but ashes and memories. Jenny and Mary were left to fend for themselves in a world that seemed to have forgotten them. 17-year-old Jenny was now the sole protector of 8-year-old Mary. She had to grow up overnight, becoming both sister and mother. Their small, dilapidated apartment in the wrong part of town was a constant reminder of their struggle. The walls seemed to close in on them, suffocating their hopes. Every day was a battle against hunger, a relentless fight to find enough food to keep them going. A desperate attempt to keep a roof over their heads, Jenny faced the constant threat of eviction. The bills piled up, and the notices became more frequent. Jenny worked tirelessly, taking on odd jobs, cleaning houses, and doing anything to earn a few pennies. She sacrificed her own dreams and aspirations for the sake of her sister, but it was never enough. Despair gnawed at her, a constant companion in her lonely nights. The weight of her responsibilities was crushing. The thought of failing Mary, her last remaining family, was unbearable. Jenny's love for her sister was the only thing that kept her going, a flicker of hope in the darkness. One dreary evening, driven to the edge, Jenny found herself outside the Red Lantern, a notorious establishment in the city's underbelly. The whispers, the judging eyes, they all screamed at her, amplifying her shame. But desperation had a way of silencing even the loudest morals. The first time was a blur, a haze of fear and self-loathing. The men, with their greedy hands and lustful eyes, disgusted her. But each encounter, each degrading touch, put food on the table, kept Mary safe. This was her secret, her cross to bear. She was Mary's protector, even if it meant sacrificing her own soul. Mr. Linus seemed different. Unlike the others who came and went, he had an aura that set him apart. He carried himself with an air of sophistication. His clothes were expensive, his demeanor gentle. There was a certain grace in the way he moved, a quiet confidence that was hard to ignore. He sought her out, his blue eyes holding a strange mix of curiosity and kindness. It was as if he saw something in her that no one else did, something worth understanding. He didn't treat her like the others. There was a respect in his voice, a genuine interest in what she had to say. He spoke to her, asked her questions, listened intently as she spoke about Mary. He wanted to know about her life, her dreams, her fears. He seemed genuinely interested in her life, her struggles. He wasn't just making small talk, he was truly engaged in their conversations. For the first time, Jenny felt seen, not just as a means to an end, but as a person. She felt a sense of relief, a weight lifting off her shoulders. Mr. Linus became a regular. His visits were no longer a surprise, but something she looked forward to. He never pressured her, never made her uncomfortable. His presence was a comfort, a steadying force in her chaotic life. He brought gifts for Mary, helped with their rent. His generosity was unexpected, yet deeply appreciated. He became Jenny's anchor in the storm, a glimmer of hope in her bleak world. His support was not just financial, but emotional as well. Could this be her way out? Jenny began to wonder if Mr. Linus was the key to a new beginning, a chance to escape the life she had known for so long. She started to dream of a better life, one where she and Mary could be happy and free. The thought of a brighter future filled her with hope. With each passing day, Jenny and Mr. Linus grew closer. Their bond strengthened, built on trust and mutual respect. Jenny felt empowered, ready to take control of her life. She began to make plans, to think about the possibilities that lay ahead. Together, they walked a path of hope and possibility, sharing moments of laughter and joy. For the first time in a long time, Jenny felt truly alive. She was ready to face whatever challenges came her way, knowing that with Mr. Linus by her side, anything was possible. This was her glimmer of hope, her chance at a new beginning. One evening, Mr. Linus invited Jenny to his home. He claimed he wanted to introduce her to his wife, a kind woman who was interested in helping Mary. Hope surged through Jenny. Maybe, just maybe, her luck was finally turning. His house was grand, opulent, everything Jenny and Mary were not. He led her inside, his hand on her back. a gesture that felt different, possessive. He offered her a drink, his smile no longer warm but predatory. "There's no wife," he said, his voice a chilling whisper as he locked the front door, the click echoing through the silent house like a gunshot. The fear, suppressed for so long, exploded within Jenny. She had walked into a trap. Section 5. Bound by fear. Panic seized Jenny. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest, each beat echoing the terror that gripped her soul. The dimly lit room seemed to close in on her, shadows dancing menacingly on the walls. She tried to run, but Mr. Linus was faster, stronger. His footsteps echoed behind her, a relentless predator closing in on his prey. The alleyway offered no escape, its darkness swallowing her desperate cries for help. He grabbed her, his grip bruising, his eyes blazing with a terrifying madness. His fingers dug into her skin, leaving marks that would haunt her long after this night. His eyes, wild and unhinged, bore into her soul, stripping away any semblance of safety she once felt. She fought back, kicking, scratching, screaming, but it was no use. Her strength was no match for his, her resistance only fueling his rage. Each scream seemed to fall on deaf ears, the world outside oblivious to her plight. He overpowered her, tied her to a chair, his touch violating, his words like venom in her ears. The ropes cut into her wrists and ankles, binding her to a fate she couldn't escape. His voice, dripping with malice, whispered promises of pain and suffering. "You're mine now," he hissed, his face inches from hers, his breath hot and foul. The words sent shivers down her spine, each syllable a dagger to her hope. His proximity was suffocating, his presence a constant reminder of her helplessness. Tears streamed down Jenny's face, her mind racing, her heart pounding against her ribs. Memories of happier times flashed before her eyes, a stark contrast to the nightmare she was living. Each tear was a silent plea for mercy, a cry for salvation that seemed so far out of reach. She was trapped, her worst nightmare coming true. The room seemed to shrink around her, the walls closing in, suffocating her with their oppressive presence. Every breath was a struggle, every moment a battle against the despair threatening to consume her. He was no different from the others, worse, because he had pretended to be different, had earned her trust only to betray it so brutally. The realization cut deep, a wound that would never fully heal. His smile, cruel and mocking, was a twisted reminder of her misplaced trust. But there was something else in his eyes, something that terrified her even more than his violence, obsession. It was a dark, consuming fire that promised no escape, no reprieve. His gaze was a prison, one that held her captive in a nightmare she feared would never end. Just when all hope seemed lost, a sound pierced through Jenny's terror, a pounding on the front door. Her neighbors, an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, had heard her muffled screams. Relief washed over her, momentarily eclipsing the fear. Mr. Linus, his face contorted with rage, went to the door, his voice a stark contrast as he put on a facade of concern. Jenny struggled against the ropes, her eyes pleading with the elderly couple as they peered through the doorway. "Just a misunderstanding," Mr. Linus chuckled, his eyes cold and calculating. My, how concerned you are. She's just a bit hysterical." Mr. and Mrs. Smith hesitated, their gazes shifting between Jenny's tear-stained face and Mr. Linus's charming facade. For a fleeting moment, Jenny allowed herself to believe they would help, that they saw through his lies. But their hesitation turned into understanding nods, their concern replaced by a dismissive shrug. "Ah, young love," Mrs. Smith said with a knowing smile, completely misinterpreting the situation. Such drama. They turned and left, their footsteps fading into the night, leaving Jenny alone with her tormentor. The weight of their betrayal was heavier than the ropes binding her. It was a confirmation of her worst fear. Nobody cared. She was invisible, worthless, except to those who sought to exploit her. Despair threatened to consume Jenny, but a new resolve ignited within her. Mary. She had to protect Mary. Gathering her wits, she looked at Mr. Linus, his eyes gleaming with a disturbing light. She had to play his game, outsmart him. "Please," she choked out, her voice trembling. "Let me go. I won't tell anyone. Just let me go." She knew it was a lie, but she had to buy time to find a way out. Mr. Linus chuckled, a dark, chilling sound. "Oh, Jenny," he said, running a hand down her cheek, sending shivers down her spine. "Don't you understand? You're not going anywhere. You're mine now." As Mr. Linus's words echoed in the silent house, Jenny's blood ran cold. She knew she had to escape, but how? Her eyes darted around, searching for any means of escape, her mind racing. And then she remembered. Mary. Mary was alone at home, vulnerable, unsuspecting. A fresh wave of terror washed over Jenny. Mr. Linus knew where she lived. He had been there, brought gifts for Mary. He would hurt Mary. The thought was unbearable. She had to get to Mary, warn her, protect her. But how could she escape the clutches of a madman, with time ticking away and her little sister's life hanging in the balance?